From New York, Mosharraf Zaidi joins us. He's a Pakistani journalist and columnist. He's also served as a consultant for the UN and the European Union in Pakistan and Afghanistan. He was also quoted in Jeremy Scahill's report. I mean, that there are covert US operations in Pakistan is one of the worst kept secrets of the Pentagon. But nonetheless, did these allegations surprise you?
I think they're going to surprise a lot of people because of the source. As was mentioned in your package, there's been a huge hullabaloo within the Pakistani press, particularly the press that's sort of, right off nationalists, so the sort of what we call the hyper-nationalists in Pakistan have been going on and on about covert wars and about the presence of Blackwater and the evil designs of these kinds of groups. But largely, sort of mainstream Pakistan, at least the opinion elite, if you will, have not seen those allegations as substantive. What Scahill's report does is give it real sort of gravitas, given that it's for the nation, given that it's Jeremy Scahill making this report. So I think it kind of changes the game. It certainly makes the life of a lot of Pakistanis who want to have a rational public discourse in Pakistan much more difficult, because in a sense it validates the allegations that were coming from the hyper-nationalists.
And of course it's not, I mean, in the last few weeks we've had a drip of allegations like this. Seymour Hersh had a piece recently in the New Yorker about cooperation on nuclear safety. Is it conceivable that such programs, they could be in place without the full cooperation of the Pakistani military?
No, I don't think that that's possible, especially because this, I mean, while the news is breaking right now, Scahill's article sort of, talks about 2006, 2007, and Blackwater, in fact, in Scahill's book, which is now over 2 years old, Blackwater has been involved in Pakistan in some capacity or the other since 2002. So I think a lot of the umbrage within Pakistan has been building up, but the fact that these allegations are coming to light today is only reflective of the reporting lag here, because in fact Blackwater has been there for a while.
So who has the most to lose by these allegations and or to gain? Is it the Pakistani military? Is it the civilian government? Who's the anger then directed to?
I think largely this will get directed at the Zaidi government, the PPP government that won the election last year in February, and that is already teetering on the back of its inability to perform some of the basic governance functions in the country.
Even though it's the Pakistani military, really, which is cooperating on a lot of these programs.
Well, I mean, the history of Pakistan will show that the military does 10 things and gets blamed for one or two of them. The politicians basically do nothing and get blamed for everything. And I think that this is a cycle that keeps repeating itself. It certainly is likely to repeat itself now.
What do you make very quickly of that allegation by the Pakistani Taliban that they're not responsible for civilian bombings, that it's Blackwater?
Well, I mean, I think that there's people, a very small group in Pakistan that will buy that and will be sort of, will have their opinions buttressed by that, supported by that. But I think the large majority of Pakistanis, according to all the opinion polling, whether it's the Pew survey or the IRI survey, the large majority of Pakistanis reject the Taliban, and the fact that they haven't bombed, that not every single one of the bombings, even if it is a fact, even won't change the perception of the Pakistani people about the Taliban. The Taliban are not a popular group of folks in Pakistan.
Earlier I spoke with Jeffrey Adicott. He's a professor of law at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas. He's also a former senior legal advisor to U.S. Special Forces. I asked him whether it's possible the U.S. president does not know of the extent of Blackwater's alleged covert actions in Pakistan.
I don't believe that. The president, has increased these drone attacks. He knows what his forces are. He's intimately aware of the assets that he has and how they're using them. And of course, in any war, you have covert operations, so that in and of itself is not something sinister. And it depends on your premise. If we're not in a state of war, then yes, we're assassinating people and we're kidnapping people. If we are in a state of war, then we're killing belligerents, and we're detaining belligerents, which is perfectly lawful. The legal division here is that these civilian contractors can only engage in defensive type activities, supply and support of actually uniformed personnel. If they press the envelope and engage in offensive operations, that's when it becomes questionable, and in my opinion, they're probably pressing the envelope, and more we're using civilian contractors because of their expertise to assist probably in planning offensive operations, but they're not in there pulling the triggers and doing the actual functions. Those are done by military personnel.
And what about congressional oversight? Is there a need for that in this situation?
Well, I think so. I mean, we obviously have to have Congress involved in this war, and anytime you have a war, both branches should be involved. The executive branch and the congressional branch have a role to play. And again, the fact that we're engaged in covert operations, that's part of the quote-unquote war on terror. It's a war that's fought against individuals that don't wear uniforms, they don't belong to a nation state, they do not abide by the law of war, and so we need intelligence, we need covert activities as long as we act within the law. And the fourth estate, the press here in this country, we're keen to ensure that our government is following the law.
But given the mood on Capitol Hill, you sometimes wonder whether there'll be a few people who are quite reassured by this, and if they do now address this issue, it'll probably be to legalize covert operations, or indeed the mandate of the President and his military commanders to hire such contractors.
Well, that's it. I mean, we need a full hearing. If it's behind closed doors, that's fine, but we need to decide exactly how far we can go in accordance with the Geneva Conventions. And that's my premise, what I started with. The law of war, which was the last major revision was 1949, and then in the 70s, they really weren't written to address this war that we're in right now, where we're fighting belligerents that, again, as I said, they don't belong to a country, they don't wear uniforms. And the law of war hasn't really caught up to the reality of the virtual state, for example, of Al-Qaeda.